Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. We are reading through the book of Genesis together, which is the first book in the Bible. And really, what we've been encouraging you to do the last several weeks is simply read one chapter a day, and then we're highlighting a few verses from that chapter to keep you thinking about some things, reflecting, and really applying it to your life. And so this week, we're beginning with chapter 11 of the book of Genesis. Now, this is an interesting story. The first portion of this chapter talks about the Tower of Babel. I'm going to highlight that a little bit today. But if you read through the whole chapter, the second part begins to do the lineage of Abraham, going all the way back to Shem, which was a son of Noah. We talked about him last week. And now it's bringing us up to present time when we're going to be going forward in these chapters this week, talking about the life of Abram, who then became Abraham. So interesting stuff. I encourage you to read through the whole chapter. But I want to simply read to us today the first 4 verses, okay? Here's what it says. Genesis 11, starting in verse 1. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Now, obviously, I emphasized some words there to get the point across, as I know some of you might be listening to this in the car and there's people honking or you're having kids running around in the background. But as you read through that on your own today, hopefully a little slower, a little bit more thoughtful and methodical, notice those words. So here's the scene. The people have come together. They have one common language. They are unified by that commonality. And yet we see in these scriptures that they still have a rebellious heart. Now, remembering context, just a few chapters ago, we read through the story of Noah and the flood and how the earth was evil. The people were wicked to the point that God regretted making them. And so he destroyed the whole earth through the flood, as you can go back and read in previous chapters. And yet here, generations forward, they're still rebellious. And what they've done here now, as we read in this portion, is they've actually come together and plotted and strategized with pride. And they're really trying to create an earthly structure to signify what's happening inwardly, this rebellion against God. They don't want to make God's name known. They don't want a place to worship the Lord. What they want to do is they want a place that signifies their importance, something that would reach all the way up to the heavens. And so you can read the rest of the story. I encourage you to do so and to see how God deals with that, because he does. But that's not the point I want us to consider today. As I was really reading this through myself, it caused me to reflect and think about times that I have fellowshipped with other believers for bad intent. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been together with a group of believers? Now, they weren't believers back here, but I'm talking about believers, and you found yourself corporately sinning. I think about times that I've gossiped, that I've sat around with other believers of the faith and actually taken that as an opportunity to collectively maybe talk in a negative way about someone who wasn't present. Gossip, how destructive, how horrible to cause division and dissension, or maybe even to sway someone else's opinion of someone because of an opinion I have. And yet I've done that. It caused me to think of other times where I've gotten off course instead of keeping my eyes on Jesus. Have you ever done that? Have you ever found yourself swept away with a group of people that together you made poor choices? And sometimes, especially when it's happening with believers, we justify it because look, they're doing it too. Let's caution ourselves here and learn from this story. When we're making decisions about who we spend our time with, about who we allow into our circle of influence, upon who we influence, are we choosing people that are challenging us and spurring us on in our faith? Or similar to this, have we surrounded ourselves with people who actually encourage our sin, who actually support our poor choices, who actually rally around and add fuel to the fire of rebelliousness against God? Think about that today. Maybe there's some friendship adjustments you need to make. Obviously, there may be some heart adjustments we need to make. I know there were many years ago when I was in high school and I was with a group of friends that I knew that when I was with that specific group of friends, I made poor choices. And I recognized it. I know that when I'd leave a setting or an outing with them and I reflected on the poor choices I'd make, and I always go, oh, I did it again. And yet I continued in relationship with them. It wasn't until years later where I naturally, because of life circumstances, moved away from them that I really parted that relationship. I wish I had had more courage at the time to say, you know what? There needs to be a healthy boundary in place, because clearly I don't have enough self-control to stand up for what's right in the presence of opinions that are wrong. And so I challenge you today before the Holy Spirit to talk to God and say, God, are there people in my life that when I'm with, I tend to give in to sin more. I tend to make poor choices. I tend to rebel against you instead of be challenged to follow after you in obedience. Let's be honest before the Lord and ask for wisdom on how to move forward with those friendships and relationships. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another daily dose for spiritual growth.